Today, football is America's obsession. Families gather every Sunday. Tailgates blazing, wings sizzling, faces painted, all for the thrill of the game. But if you stepped onto a football field in the 1800s, you weren't playing a game. You were entering a war zone. It all began on college campuses in the 1860s, where students mixed rugby and soccer into something new, something dangerous. They called it football. But this wasn't the football we know today. There were no helmets, no pads, not even the forward pass. Just flesh, sweat, and bone-crushing collisions. And it gets worse. Plays had names like the Flying Wedge and the Princeton V. These weren't tactics. They were human battering rams. Lines of men locking arms, sprinting full speed into each other like living missiles. No protection. Just wool sweaters and pants stuffed with textbooks. The injuries? Brutal. Broken bones, crushed faces, unconscious players who never woke up. They called it sport, but it looked more like a blood ritual. Harvard versus Yale, the Hampton Park bloodbath. Players charge headfirst like soldiers. One breaks a nose. Another cracks a collarbone. One man drops mid-play, unmoving. They think he's dead. The crowd cheers. The president of Harvard calls football more brutal than boxing or bullfighting. Even world heavyweight champion John L. Sullivan, a man who earned his living punching skulls, said, "Football? There's murder in that game." Newspapers started counting the dead. In 1905 alone, the Chicago Tribune listed 19 players who died, not in war, not in duels, on a field, chasing a ball. The game faced extinction. Outrage erupted. Editorials demanded a ban. And then, a savior. President Theodore Roosevelt, the Rough Rider himself, stepped in. He summoned college leaders to Washington. His message: clean up the game or lose it forever. Under pressure, they rewrote the rules, added safety equipment. And just like that, American football escaped death. But its violent DNA, that stayed. And football wasn't alone. Let's talk about baseball. America's gentle pastime, right? Not even close. In the 1800s, baseball was chaos. No gloves, no helmets. Just bare hands catching 90 miles per hour fireballs. And when it came to tagging a runner, you didn't touch them. You threw the ball at them. Yes, you could hit a man with the ball to get him out. They called it soaking or plugging. Fans loved it. Players broke fingers, bruised ribs, and sometimes bled on the diamond. Even catchers, the most vulnerable position in the game, wore nothing. They used sponges, raw meat, even hay to protect themselves. One catcher, Doug Allison, tried wearing a buckskin glove, a mitten. He was mocked so relentlessly, he took it off and played barehanded again. It took a star, pitcher Albert Spalding, to make gloves cool. When Spalding wore one in 1877, fans didn't jeer. They followed. But while gloves, pads, and masks evolved for catchers, one player stayed exposed, the batter. August 1920, Yankees versus Cleveland. Ray Chapman steps up to the plate. A spitball drills him in the skull. Blood leaks from his ears as he collapses. He dies the next day, 29 years old. But still, no helmets. It wouldn't be until 1971, over 50 years later, that Major League Baseball finally made helmets mandatory. Let that sink in. Players wore cups in 1904. Helmets? Nearly 4 decades later. What does that tell us? For years, American sports weren't about safety. They were about survival. Pain was the price of glory. And only the toughest lived to tell the tale.